Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good following morning. It is AMA number 34. Today is November 12th, 2020. Good to see everybody that I will be seeing in a moment. Some interesting stuff going on already today inside the JCC building. We had a little bit of a scare. What happened? We got an email. Saying that there was a bomb in the backpack of one of the kids, and it was going to blow up. So we took all the precautions necessary. Within a few moments, we found out that it was actually sent to all the schools, or many schools in Poland. It wasn't sent to us. It wasn't some sort of anti-Semitic attack or attack specifically on us. But we went through the whole protocols, and the police came and dogs and checked the building and all of that. So that's been what's going on here for the last couple hours. So it was obviously very worrying at first, and it was a little surprising. But then we saw that it was just some crackpot email that was sent, evidently, so far we know, sent from out of the country and sent to all the schools and preschools in Poland, or most of the schools and preschools in Poland. But of course, it was an odd thing to do because the schools in Poland are closed anyway. Everyone's learning from, through online. So really only the preschools were affected. The police said we didn't have to evacuate or anything, but we have a little bit more stricter security protocols because being a Jewish institution. So we did send all the kids home early and evacuated, and let the police come and swept the building. And now we have our own security coming to sweep the building again. But yeah, it was sent to dozens or hundreds of schools. So not really to us, nothing really to worry about. I am here in the office, so don't worry. Don't worry about anything. So yeah, but it's always a little scary to get stuff like that. But there were no, it was just, one of those nutty all caps email. Hello, Benji. Benji, you're allowed to make jokes. What would you do if not making jokes, Benji? Hi, Lori. Yeah, it was a little scary. Hey, Linda, how are you? Blame the internet. Well, blame the internet, but without the internet, I would be talking to a blank piece of glass right now. So the internet does have some good aspects. We can't blame the internet for everything. Good morning, Jeffrey Rolat. The Rolats of Los Angeles, soon to be the Rolats of Florida. Very nice to see good Rolat participation this morning. So besides that little excitement, what else has been going on in terms of Corona in Poland? Things actually getting a little bit better, still very bad. I think there were 22,000, 23,000 cases today. So the number's starting to go down just a little bit. Of course, the numbers are still very, very high. I think there's going to be a news conference coming up today or tomorrow with perhaps some new regulations. We might go into an even stricter lockdown, which would mean, I guess, not allowed out of the house, which is, I think that's the only thing left to lock down, really. Most things are closed. Dzień dobry, pani Małgosiu. Małgosia, hello. Hi, Saul. Rain in New York. Well, you've had some nice weather in New York, so no complaining about the rain. No complaining about the rain. It was like 75 in New York yesterday, my sources tell me. So can't complain too much about that. In terms of what else is going on in Poland, yesterday was Independence Day. Of course, November 11th for us in America is Veterans Day, which is an odd day for Veterans Day, but that's a separate issue. So happy Veterans Day in New York, in America. Or it used to be called, I guess, Armistice Day, which was the day, that World War I ended in November 18, which is also, of course, if you think about Poland, was the day that Poland was regained its independence after 123 years after being partitioned by the powers that be in Europe of that time, being Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Prussia. So in Poland, it is a national holiday, and the sad thing about which is great, but the sad thing about that being a national holiday is that it's been completely hijacked by like the far right, the neo-Nazis, skinheads, treated as a day to celebrate sort of white Poland and to show that others aren't welcome. And every year there's a huge problem. They march in Warsaw and it turns into riots and attacks and attacking the police and then the counter protesters. And it's a very, very sad thing to see that a day which is celebrating the independence of a country has become something hijacked by the far right. At least in the United States, 4th of July isn't have any nationalist connotations. It's just a day to celebrate the independence of the United States. But unfortunately in Poland, and I don't know that it's permanent. I hope that will be able to change, but it's absolutely been hijacked by the far right. And yesterday was no different than every other year, although the parade was officially, or the march was officially canceled by the mayor of Warsaw, who's a good guy, and people were supposed to go only in their cars or bicycles or something. Of course, the far right ignored that and marched, and it was violent. They were shooting these flares. It's a popular thing in Europe. I don't think we in the US use those flares too much, but they were shot some flares, and along their route that they were marching, there was one building had a women's march banner, this lightning bolt, like essentially like I have. You see that in my window? I don't know if you can see that too clearly. Anyway, so they shot some of these flares and they actually burnt an apartment down. There were lots of problems between the police and the media. So really an unfortunate thing that a day that should be a celebration for all Poles has become a day that's hijacked by the nationalists. In other news in Poland, there's a lot going on in terms of what connected to this news coming out in the United States about Pope John Paul II, or all around the world, that Pope John Paul II essentially knew about the child abuse going on and was informed about accusations, Cardinal McCracken something, and didn't do anything about that. Well, of course, in Poland, there was a documentary about the former cardinal here. Well, he's still a cardinal, but he was the Archbishop of Krakow, who was the secretary, someone very close to John Paul II, his personal secretary for years and years, Cardinal Dziwisz, somebody who's actually been pretty good with the Jewish community and with interfaith dialogue, but is come under, there's a lot of negative stuff coming out now, which has to do with him knowing about some issues with pedophilia in the church. So Poland has been talking a lot about, those are the things that have been very much in the news here in Poland. I see, hi Sita watching with my dad. Hi Dad, hope you're feeling all right, Dad. Good to talk to you. So yeah, there's been that in the news of Poland, which has been unpleasant. And the US, we've had the election. We had the result. Last week was after the election, but before the result, of course, we did sort of have some idea. And lo and behold, shocking, can't believe that what's happened has happened. That Donald Trump has lost and has cried that the cheating, and that the election doesn't count, and that he won, and all this. Now, I don't in a million years say how anyone can take this seriously. This is what he's always done. He said this about the primaries. He said Ted Cruz was cheating in the primary, that he didn't win in Iowa. And he said that 6 million illegals voted. That's why Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million in 2016. He is somebody who's clearly a sore loser and somebody incapable of not incapable. He's allowed to get away with that. People, Trump's behavior is what it is, and those who are standing with him, and Mitch McConnell and Bill Barr and the rest of these people, Pompeo, really are the ones who I think who know better, and they're just looking after themselves by allowing this to go on. It's absolutely shameful. Hi, Rabbi Avi, good to see you. It's absolutely shameful, and think about how much you have to hate the institution or even the country that you're representing. Think of the damage done by standing there and talking to your followers, many of whom are lunatic followers, and saying that, yes, it's a giant conspiracy, and don't trust the voting, and don't trust this, and don't trust that. You're doing such complete, terrible damage to the institution. And how these people, all these people with waving American flags and this, and we love America, and blah, blah, America, 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 how much you have to hate America to try to weaken it and try to tear it down the way that he is by not contesting. There's no evidence of it. If there is cheating, then let's find it and fix it in any sense. but states with Republican leadership like Georgia have found that there's no counts of cheating. You have 140 million people, over 145 million people, I think, voted, and there's no widespread cheating. There's no one coming forward and talking about this in any credible way. I think it's sad. I think it's pathetic, and I think it's unfortunately it's completely in fitting with what he's done up until now, which is pretend that there's an alternate reality, that he's the greatest and he never loses and he's this super businessman and everything. And the fact is he's not, and people should wake up to that. And it's unbelievable to me that you're doing something so damaging to the United States as questioning the idea of a fair democracy in terms of voting in the United States. So shame on you. Shame on you, Donald Trump. And for those who believe that in any sense, wake up, open your eyes, and stop being fooled. It's shameful. It's a shameful thing and hurtful to the United States and to American democracy. And if you have the cojones to acknowledge, if you lose, you lose. You win, you win. Sometimes it goes one way. Sometimes it goes another way. None of us were sitting there and doing that in 2016. So strangely, also Vladimir Putin hasn't congratulated Biden. So strangely, of course, I say sarcastically. Benji says the only bigger travesty than Trump's complaining is the time that Team Latka contested the festival debate. Well, Team Latka usually wins, so I don't think we need to contest that. Saul says you agree with everything I say. Thank you, Saul. I appreciate that. Trump is crazy, but his 70 million voters might be crazier. Yes, it's the most surprising thing I've ever seen is how this person is even taken seriously by anybody. Every 40 years, he's been a joke in New York City for how he's behaved, and suddenly these people take him seriously. It's amazing to me. He's no different than refusing to acknowledge anything, and he didn't lose this, and he's the greatest at this and the greatest at that and everything else. He's a clown, and he's full of hot air. Hey, hello, Yezha Wojcik. It's a new day. Come on. Yeah, well, soon it will be a new day. It was great. I think we'll all remember where we were or most of us, when we heard the Biden announcement. It allowed Saturday about 5 o'clock. To me, the greatest thing that I saw about it, and I've been, as I told you last week, ferociously watching the news, voraciously even better, watching the news and listening to the news, was that I saw and I posted on Facebook the clip when Kamala Harris found out that they called the election on CNN, or then all the news, that she was running, and she was jogging with her little plug-in headphones, and she had to take the headphones out, and she called Joe, and she was just like, "We won, Joe, you did it, you're the president." It was very, very, I thought it was just a wonderful, real moment, and getting back to some sort of reality in this country. So eventually Trump will give up this pathetic charade, and people will start to wake up, and we can move forward. But shame on him. And shame on those who are enabling him. And with that, hello, Ben Myers. Yofi Jonathan. Mr. Myers, well played. Now I want to get to my guest. I'm very excited to be able to welcome my guest today. Jakub, Kuba. We say if your name is Jacob, Jakub in Poland, we shorten it usually and say Kuba. So Kuba Nowakowski, who is the director of a wonderful institution in Krakow called the Galicia Jewish Museum. When you come back and people are traveling once again to Krakow, when you come to Krakow, if you haven't been, you should go. And even if you've been, you should go again, because they always have different exhibitions, which are fantastic. And Kuba and I have known each other for a very, very long time. He's from Krakow, and he's been the director for 7 years or so. 10 years. Oh my God, 10 years. We have to talk about that. I didn't realize it was 10 years. It feels like not so long ago. 10 years. So it's my honor to welcome my good friend, Kuba Nowakowski. Hey, Kuba.
Hey, thank you, Jonathan, for this lovely introduction. We could skip this part about years. Let's focus on future.
No, future? Nah, come on, Kuba. When we have such a history together, we've got to focus a little bit on the past. So
yes, we do. No, thank you so much for having me on the program.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Kuba, for taking the time. Kuba, 10 years you've been the director.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, but a good one, and we'll see what the future will bring.
Absolutely. So Kuba, we've known each other. I wrote, people I think weren't sure about it. Oh, is it true or something? We've known each other for 18 years and 1 month.
It's been quite a ride. We when we met, we were in different places and looked differently a bit.
A little different, but so we met, and we should tell the story because Kuba, my first day teaching in the Department of Jewish Studies was your first day as a student in the Department of Jewish Studies.
It was what 2002?
October 2002.
Yeah, and that was, we were all very nervous, and seeing you, as a American Jew, the first American Jew we've ever met. I mean, back in 2002, Kraków was different and not as tourist heavy as it is now. So for us, this was, I think for all of us, it was the first time we've had the chance to meet a real Jew, living, breathing, laughing, speaking English, and kaha Polish person.
Kaha, absolutely. And I remember for me, I was in total shock because I'd moved to Poland not too long before. I was living in Łódź. I came down to Krakow to work, got a job at the university. So my first morning, I sit down and I didn't understand. I thought that everybody was Jewish. I was like, oh, all these people, who would be studying Jewish studies anywhere? And it didn't even enter into my mind that non-Jews are, or maybe a few, but that non-Jews are interested in anything Jewish. It blew my mind.
Well, I mean, it's back again, things are changing in Poland, and you've been talking about this a lot. But I think that in those early years, I mean, 2000, beginning of 2000s, most of us did not come to the Jewish studies kind of pursuing the career. There was no IBM behind the corner that would hire you because you speak Hebrew. There would not be too many Jewish museums. There was no Polin, no Galicia Jewish Museum. So it was more about this genuine interest in the Jewishness than rather straightforward thinking about, next 18 years of your life.
No, absolutely. Now, Kuba, I remember clearly, besides that, when you were my student and we had all, I remember your group was a wonderful, I think really one of the best group. And so many of you went on to do interesting things. You actually, your partner is Gosha Fus, also from your year, which is a cool story that you guys have that. But I remember clearly that because you grew up in Kazimierz, you grew up really around the corner from where I'm sitting right now on Polinska Street, which is maybe a 3-minute walk from the JCC. And because when we were out on campus, I used to drive sort of along the way, and I would sometimes pick you up and drive you. We would drive together to class.
That was really exciting, for me. But I do remember that. I do remember that when you would either drive or ride by a bus, and I would still, the bus would stop on my stop, and we would then go together. It was amazing. I mean, for us, it was, besides because you were a Hebrew teacher, so that was kind of main focus. But I think what you've have managed to do is to take this classes far more into Jewishness. At the Jewish studies, at the program of Jewish studies especially throughout the first years, we would focus on history, on culture, kind of usual stuff. But there was not that much about living Jewish world that existed around us. But again, in 2002, it was not that easy to go to Israel, to fly. There was no Wizz Air, no cheap, traveling. It was all far more complicated. So for us, that you brought this or New York style, Yotvata, kibbutz, freshness, and that we all really enjoyed.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I mean, I think I realized at a certain point that, once I started to get hold of this idea that these are mostly non-Jews who are just interested in everything Jewish, which was a 180 for me in terms of my expectations, especially because the year before I lived in Łódź, which was a different atmosphere in terms of the interest in everything Jewish was not there. And it was a lot sort of, you kind of felt worried as Jewish, not that here I'm teaching in the Department of Jewish Studies, and everybody's fascinated because I lived in Israel and a kibbutz and the army and from America. And this idea is, I think that I I don't know, you know, I wasn't necessarily a great Hebrew teacher, and I think I saw my role as trying to show you guys that are studying Jewish studies and so interested in everything Jewish, actually expose you a little bit to the Jewish world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something that you said at the very beginning, that this is from our particular group of students, and there was maybe around 20 of us at the very beginning, and I think almost 20 ended up 5 years later. I think that's very true, that big part of us, or many of us, are still involved in different kinds of Jewish activities, whether it's professional or free time. And I'm sure that this experience of meeting you and soaking into this living Jewishness helped many of us to develop a kind of a stronger relation with this entire universe. So I mean, question of whether you're not the best teacher or I'm not the best student, that's different. But
yeah,
no doubt we've enjoyed, and all of us have very good memories of those lessons.
Yeah, I have very good memories, and I tell you what, Kuba, I think that nobody would argue with us if we would say that we are both better directors of our respective institutions than we were teachers and students.
I don't know. I don't know about you, but yes, it's very true about me. Definitely true. But that's because Darek Gablik, who was my best colleague, is not sitting next to me. It was all his fault. It was all his fault.
I knew that you were just a really earnest student, that you wanted to be the best. But listen, I've never really had the opinion that somebody who was the best student is necessarily going to be the most successful. You were a good enough student, and you knew how to enjoy yourself. And to be honest, if you're really being serious, the fact that you were studying Jewish studies really spoke a lot, this idea, because as you said, certainly in 2002, there wasn't many career options to doing that. And it had to be something that you were studying just because you were really interested in, which is sort of my question to you, growing up, not being Jewish, but being from a family, for a long time living in Kazimierz. Was it just, you grew up in Kazimierz and that was the interest? What was it like growing up in Kazimierz with sort of surrounded by the ghosts and the memories? Was it sort of almost natural for you, considering your upbringing, to go study Jewish studies?
For me, yeah, I think that was that became a natural decision. I hadn't had too many hesitations or discussions about that. But I was born in 1983 in Kazimierz, and my family had been living in Kazimierz for generations. So even before the war, my family was there on Paulińska and on Józefa Street as a Catholic minority. But this was not something that we would discuss. I mean, that was not something that my mom would tell me about. She would explain me when we would go to Plac Żydowski. Today it's called Nowy Plac, but you can recognize someone from old days Kazimierz, because he'll always refer it to as a Plac Żydowski, the Jewish square. We would be passing one synagogue, we would be passing some other places, and she would explain me what was that. So no one ever hid this past from me, but it was not that this past would be a reason to be proud of the heritage of this neighborhood. It would not be discussed. It would not be something that would be pointed out as something significant. So for me, it was kind of a process of discovering the world that surrounds me as a young boy living in Kazimierz. And it was, I mean, the true story. When we were playing ball, the ball would go over the wall. We climbed to get the ball back, and then here we are at the Remus Cemetery. I mean, this is the first time when I saw that there was this amazing, totally different world, just wall away from where I live, where I go to visit my friends and colleagues. But I mean, this is something that I also realized later on, was that even without being consciously taught about the Jewishness, this Jewishness was soaking into my DNA. I mean, in my family apartment, my family home, my mom would always refer to a kitchen oven, to a stove, as a szabaśnik, as a Shabbos oven. For me, until I went to high school, to Podgórze, another part of the river, and I met other people from outside of Kazimierz, I was convinced that this is one of the legal, legit words in Polish language for a stove, and that this word kind of reached me through the memories of my mother and their parents from this 30s, a world that didn't exist anymore. So it was kind of, at some point you start realizing that lots of the parts of the story that you consider to be yours actually comes from someone else that you don't know. So I think that was one of those reasons, or perhaps the main reason to start trying to find out more. And again, late 90s, early 2000s, there was no internet, at least in this scale that we have now. There's no guidebooks. There is a Jakim Rusek's Jewish Culture Center, and that was still doing some things, but it was it would not be something that me as a regular boy from Kazimierz would consider to be, appealing with the programs it was doing. It was later on when I became a student that became one of the destinations.
Right. And so, I mean, it's, it makes perfect sense in seeing your background that would be interesting to you. Was it surprising for you when you went to the Jagiellonian University, when you started studying Jewish studies? Were you interested in the other stories? Was it natural for you that Darek Gavlik from Rabka and Anna Gulinska from Tarnów and Gosha Fuz from Nowy Targ, Nowy Sącz or Nowy Targ?
Nowy Targ.
I always get Nowy Targ and Nowy Sącz confused. Nowy Targ, I was right. Was it surprising for you that these other people were also studying Jewish studies? Did you think, oh, it's natural for me, I'm from Kazimierz, but what is this? Or did it also seem natural for you? Was it something that you thought about very much, of the motivation for others? Or did you just think it was a normal thing, like, oh, I'm studying psychology, they're also interested in psychology? Or was it sort of interesting to you, even starting out, that other people were interested in this thing that you were interested in?
It was a surprise, but not in the sense that people find this interesting, but rather that they also were surrounded by those Jewish traces. I mean, we were at some point when I did my homework and realized that yes, Jews been living in Kraków for generations, I would still be absolutely not aware of the fact that Jews were also living in all those places that you mentioned, that they've been there in small towns and villages across all of Poland. So that was surprised that, well, wow, you're in Rabka or in Nowy Targ that I know from going there for holidays, or Zakopane. All those places never would be put in this box of Jewish sites or Jewish towns or Jewish villages. So that was a surprise, because for them, I mean, we find it natural, because all of us, I think no one from our year would come and would, back in 2002, 2003, say, I want to do this because I want to be a guide, or I want to be working in a museum, or I want to be working in IBM because I don't know, I will learn Hebrew. I don't think there was anyone had thinking like this. It was more about, yes, that's interesting for me.
No question. And I think, to me, still to this day, the feeling I got by seeing all these young, passionate, incredibly intelligent people who were studying something which had no end game, which didn't have, IBM now, which hires a lot of Hebrew speakers in Krakow, or that there are 60 flights a week during non-corona times between Israel and Poland, and it's easy to go for a weekend to Tel Aviv, is unheard of, back then. But it still, I think, really influences me to this day, especially when we talk about anti-Semitism, which we can talk about, and Poland, and this whole complicated issue of Poland's relationship with its Jewish past and with its Jewish present, even. Seeing these young people like you and your colleagues that were just knocking down the doors to connect to anything Jewish, although yourselves, really, most of you weren't Jewish.
Well, I mean, I think that this is something that people, from my further experience, now working at the museum, we find this very often, that people from abroad can't really get over this fact that we are non-Jewish. I mean, they are looking for a real, true reasons. And of course, I mean, these days, fine. I mean, people do choose Jewish studies because they want to work in museums, or they want to be a guide, or they want to end up in IBM or any other company, and that's fine. I mean, that's absolutely fine. But this was different, and it's true. It's still very true across Poland, because Kraków is different, Warsaw is different. But if you go to small town and village where there is no big, companies, where there is no tourist industry, you will still find locals that are, from very different reasons, starting to to search for those Jewish traces and tell those Jewish stories in a much more difficult environment that we are in Krakow. So this is still very true 18 years later.
Absolutely. We, Galicia Jewish Museum and the JCC, we, along with Michael Treisen, every year for a while, for years and years, have been giving awards every year during the Jewish Culture Festival around that time, the beginning of the festival, to non-Jews who help with Jewish heritage and cleaning cemeteries or doing things like that. And we've seen hundreds of people that are doing that, and that's a small percentage of those doing it in difficult circumstances, not here in Kazimierz and Krakow and Warsaw, but in these smaller places. So there's a lot of that.
Yes, there is.
Which is a nice thing to see. So Kuba, tell me, you started already 10 years as the director, which now I'm shocked by that. But at the Galicia Jewish Museum, which is an institution that's very, I feel very close to personally. I knew the founder pretty well, and professionally, I think it's one of our main partner institution. Talk a little bit about just the idea behind Galicia Jewish Museum.
So yeah, the museum was founded in 2004 by British photojournalist Chris Schwartz. He would start coming to Poland in the late 80s to document solidarity movement, and then as a side job he would start documenting traces of Jewish past still visible in Poland. At some point he met another very important person for us, Professor Jonathan Weber, who was a researcher, anthropologist, who would bring to Poland students and do research in Auschwitz and around Auschwitz. And to make long story short, they met and they decided to work together to create a book that would document traces of Jewish past in Galicia, the former southern Poland. At some point, the idea evolved from the book into a museum, and then in 2004, Chris opened this museum that from very beginning was not to be a Holocaust memorial, not even a historical museum. In a way, I think we are much more like a contemporary Jewish museum, because for us the past is important, the past is there, and that's where the story where our story starts. But this past is important because through those objects that still exist, we try to describe what is happening around us today in Poland. So lots of our projects, lots of our exhibitions are dealing not only with the Jewish life before the war or after, but with what's going on in Poland today over the last 30 years. And that's something that is also visible in our core exhibition called Traces of Memory, which is precisely that. It is the report from the last 30 years, the processes that took place in Poland since 1993. So I think that people find it very, very important. And despite that the museum is in the core exhibition, does not use multimedia like it is in Pauline or even in Schindler, I think people are missing this context of what was it like before and what's going on today. And I think that's what we provide in the museum throughout the core exhibition.
I think one of the interesting things to me, looking at the history as somebody who remembers the museum when it opened until today, 16 years or so, was that how much the museum has grown and how much really more that it has become than the original idea. I think the scope of it, I don't think Chris Schwartz ever would have dreamed that the museum has become what it's become. And if you think of that, in the beginning was really almost, there started to be education programs, but in terms of what you're showing was, I think in the beginning was primarily only the core exhibition and how that has really expanded. And to me, I wanted to sort of ask you, because you were at the museum at that time when Chris passed away, how difficult was it to make that transition? You have a museum that's founded by this very strong figure and he wanted everything. I remember, the exact color had to be this percentage of gray with everything. He was a real perfectionist with a photographer's eye, and he created this space that was very much his. And then he passes away, and I think there was a real unknown aspect about what would happen. Somebody with such a strong vision has a vision and was the motor behind it. And will it continue? What's going to happen? Is it just going to stay frozen in time? And I think that it's done something tremendous, which is expand on the original idea of the founder when the founder passes away, in an untimely sort of shocking way for everyone.
Yeah, that's very true. Chris died in 2007 of cancer. He knew that he is dying. He was his family. He was originally from UK, from Great Britain. His family wanted to bring him back, but it was his decision to stay until the very end in Poland. That's because of the museum. I mean, this is what became his only child. So in terms of post-Chris reality, it was also problematic because the exhibition and the museum was not created by a number of experts that would come together and build this as a professional task. It was a result of work of one person. I mean, Chris Schwartz came to Krakow in 2003. No, a suitcase is full of money, no big names in notebook. And then in less than a year, he was able to bring together a group of people that were allow him to create this museum. So it was very much connected to this one person, the creator, author of the core exhibition. And I think that's added to the problem of losing Chris in 2007, that you're not only losing a director, you're losing a creator, a person that was identified with many people as a museum. I mean, museum was Chris. People would not necessarily often come to see the museum, people would come to see Chris. So it was really a time of some uncertainty, and that definitely a big credit to his to the person that replaced Chris, Kate Credy. Who was a director until 2010, who was able to take this ship through this big storm, and because of the sponsors, because of the board members that been with the museum from very beginning, and they also decided to keep supporting the museum with when Chris passed away. So. But yes, I mean, the museum has changed, and we couldn't try to pretend that things are not changing, and we decided to be expanding some of those programs, bring more temporary exhibitions, do more educational programming, and that was I think working for the museum in terms of numbers. In 2010, when I came in, the museum had like 20,000 visitors. 2019, it was over 70,000 visitors, with exhibitions traveling across the United States, South Africa, and many other places. So we kind of took the advantage of where we are. We took the advantage of this core exhibition that Chris built, the contacts and connections he created, and I think we've did our best to develop it into a place that is still fascinating and user-friendly and welcoming and not repetitive in terms of what you can see in other places in Warsaw or Krakow.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about the exhibitions, but before that, I want to focus maybe a little bit on the education program. I think that, one of the things that I'm always most impressed by is the fact that you are, and again, we'll talk about Corona and how you're dealing and we're dealing, and we can, sort of maybe imagine the pre-Corona and post-Corona world for a moment, but the education program, in other words, that you're doing, and of course, you maybe talk a little bit about it, but that from my point of view of taking so many, especially Polish school children, that I feel like you maybe talk a little bit about this idea that, it used to be just, not just, but a lot of foreign tourists and foreign high school kids or March of the Living, whatever, came into the museum, I think, very early on. And I think you've also added to that in a very important way by being one of the primary institutions which is educating non-Jewish Polish, not only youth, but for this point of view, youth about Jewish history and Jewish contemporary culture, and an introduction to them about, let's say, Jews in Poland, and not only Jews in Poland as people that were murdered, but Jews in Poland that contributed so much to the Poland that we're living in today. So maybe talk a little bit about the educational program as a whole, and also how you did that transition of sort of how did you get schools to make the Galicia Jewish Museum an essential part of their curriculum?
Well, it was a process. As you say, at the very beginning in 2010 or 2009, vast majority of those visitors that would come through the doors would be foreigners. I mean, 2008, it is like 90% of the 20,000 that are foreigners. So we're talking about less than 2,000 Poles that would come through the doors. In 2019, again, before the COVID, we were looking at those 70,000 visitors, approximately 40% of them Poles. On top of that, we've worked with more than 20,000 Polish students in their hometowns, in the villages across all of Poland. So yes, in so-called meantime, there was a big transition, and I think that my appointment as a director was also part of this process of localizing the museum. I mean, for the first couple of years, because of the origins, because of the crease, yes, people would come and people would find this as a English-speaking institution in the landscape of Krakow that was not very friendly at the time to the English-speaking visitors. I mean, in 2000, we were the first museum in 2004 that would have captions in English to all the exhibitions that we would do. If you'd go to any other museum, there was nothing like this. So that was one of the reasons of the success of the exhibition, of the museum among the foreigners. But for Poles, it was a process. I mean, it was a process of us putting together programs that would involve Jewish culture, pre-war history, post-war history, and then just sending them out to the teachers, organizing seminars for teachers. This is also something that I think made a tremendous difference for us. One of our flagship projects is the program called Teaching the Holocaust in Context. We've been doing this seminar for 10 years now, since 2010. And over those 10 years, we had like 500 teachers from all of Poland, Eastern Ukraine, former Soviet Russia, coming for 7 days to Krakow to learn about how to teach about the Holocaust and how to teach about things that go beyond the Holocaust. Because again, one of the problems that we know, and that's true, and that you're very well aware of, that is not the fact that Polish kids don't learn about the Holocaust. The problem is that they learn nothing except the Holocaust in terms of Jewishness, and that's something that we find is very troubling. I mean, this is a reason of most of our problems in terms of Polish-Jewish relations today, that those kids and their parents have no idea about anything that happened before or after. And when there is no knowledge, you know, this gap is filled with stereotypes, with gossips, and this is something that we've been facing in all those years. But yeah, I mean, we've started programs for local kids, so we would have free English lessons for local kids from neighborhood that would come to the museum every weekend. We would have programs for young kids, like 6, 7, 5 years old, to learn, to tell them about Jewishness, about the culture. So when they reach in their education system the point when they will go to Auschwitz, they will already know something about the Jews. Otherwise.
And are they receptive? Do you find generally that the kids are receptive? Wow, interesting. Are they, you know, I would assume so, but is that the case?
Very much. I mean, yeah, I very well remember at the beginnings of this program for kids. We thought that we wanna educate young parents, so they would then transfer their knowledge to their kids. So we've organized a program for the parents to learn about Jewish culture and so on, and it was absolute failure. I mean, we had no one. So then we thought that maybe we should we started from the wrong way, and then we redesigned this program as a program for young kids. I mean, again, 5, 6, 7 years old, they would come and they would build a synagogue out of, paper. They would make paper cuts, drawings with Jewish community. They would build sukkah and so on. But of course, if you have a 5-year-old kid, he will not come alone. He would come with the parents. And what we've seen very often is that parents were making notes, like, can you repeat that? And I think that was one of the things that we've seen, that people would sometimes feel kind of, I don't know, odd that they would come to the museum to learn, but it would be far more natural to bring your kid, so he or she would have fun, and then you would learn. But I mean, absolutely, listen, in those 16 years, we've never had a single act of vandalism. We've never had a single graffiti on our walls, even though we are proudly manifesting our Jewishness. It's not like we are called, Galicia Museum without Jewish. We have Jewishness all over the place. And again, 16 years of existence, not a single problem. And I think that's a good example of this openness. It doesn't mean that there is no anti-Semitism. It doesn't mean that there is no problems. There is lots of that, even in Krakow, even among the people that are coming to the museum. But it's still, people are very keen on learning. And one of the funniest stories I can share with you, kind of showing you this complicated relations of the Poles toward the Jewishness, is related with the Jewish Culture Festival of whatever 2, 3, 4 years ago, when Beit Kraków with Rabbi Tanya Segal was arranging those open Shabbat celebrations at the museum, which would involve playing guitar and singing and so on. And that was a part of the program of the festival. So anybody could come in. So it's Friday, people are coming in, and it's really popular. We have people coming and flocking and flocking and flocking. And at some point, we're just having like 400 people at the main hall. The space is packed. And when we know that there's one more Israeli group that is supposed to come, so we keep 40 chairs for them at the front. But as usual, Israelis are late. Crowd in front of the museum is getting bigger and bigger. And we say, look, guys, sorry, we're terribly sorry. We can't let you in. It's just full because of the safety reasons. Please come back, next week or next year. Say, okay. And then out of the corner, Israeli coming in with bodyguards, oh, move. And then in a split seconds, this very kind of open, friendly crowd is changing. The atmosphere is changing. Suddenly we hear that, oh, look, you've been lying at us. You have space. You're Jews. You're lying. The funniest of all, I mean, if one can call it like this, was that some people started to shout at us saying, we are Poles. We are in Poland, and we have a right to enter this bloody Shabbat service in your museum. So open the doors. Yeah. I mean, I don't think in the history there was like a situation like this when Poles wanted to enter Shabbat service to participate, not to beat the people inside. So this is some kind of the atmosphere, and I think situation we're dealing in here. People are, even those that are interested, are still coming in with huge number of stereotypes, of misconceptions, and that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of those only in Kazimir stories for sure, that we both have so many of them and are living this in real time. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I feel like in terms of just those things, that I'm always so mindful of being Jewish. If I'm if somebody sees that I'm from the JCC and I'm in a restaurant, I'm always like making sure that I'll give like a big tip or something, just because I feel like they're not really interacting with many Jews. And if they are interacting, it's possibly these Israeli groups that don't leave always the best, school groups always that don't leave necessarily the best impression. So I'm always sort of mindful, like, oh, if I do something nice, then it's the Jews are nice. You're very aware of this in this situation, but it's.
I don't think we've behaved better when we were on a high school trip to other place. So I don't think it's a nationality, but yes, that was one of those moments.
Absolutely. No, so maybe we talk a little bit about the education, and of course the core exhibition we talked about Chris's photographs, and now the additional that you've expanded it with photographs by Jason Francisco. But I want to talk a little bit about that the museum has become also a place where you have temporary exhibitions, and you've had some really wonderful temporary exhibitions. I'm going to ask about at the end. I'm going to ask about one of them now, but not yet. But maybe talk over your years, maybe a couple of highlights of some exhibitions that you've had, temporary exhibitions that have been at the museum.
Well, there've been, yes. I mean, we're opening temporary exhibition like twice a year, and there've been quite a lot of very fascinating projects. In general, what we're trying to do is although we bring exhibitions from outside, so whatever, last year, 2 years ago, we had a exhibition from Jewish Museum London about blood in Jewish tradition, fascinating project. But in general, we try to find stories that no one has yet told, and then be telling those stories at the museum. So I think there were many powerful exhibitions, because most of them were connected with those particular stories of particular people. One of those would be exhibition of works of Ryszard Apte, a young Krakowian Jew coming from kind of assimilated family. He was attending a Hebrew gymnasium not far from the JCC, around the corner from the JCC. He was a teenager when the war broke out. He was, even before the war, he was recognized as a very skilled painter. And then to make a long story short, you know, he was in the ghetto, then he left the city, then he came back. Then he was living with his family in Wieliczka, where they were apprehended. Apte was taken to a slave labor camp in Stalowa Wola. He was trying to escape. He was caught and hanged on the gallows as a 15-year-old boy. And 70 years later, at the attic of the house that they've been living in Wieliczka, people are discovering a green notebook called Ryszard Apte 1939, 1940. This was his notebook that he prepared for a school year of 1939-1940, the school year that for the Jewish kids never started. And in this notebook, he would paint a beautiful, absolutely amazing drawings depicting his kind of visions that he had in the ghetto. That's not a representation of the things that he's seen, but rather his visions of the world surrounding it. Absolutely amazing. And to be holding those drawings, the original notebook that for 70 years been lying in the attic among, you know, different stuff, and then to be telling this story at the museum, it was quite powerful. And then to other story of Rivka Lipschitz, again, the diary is being found in Auschwitz in January 45 by the Russian doctor. She doesn't speak Polish. She takes the diary to Omsk in Siberia, and then to Moscow, and then her granddaughter take it to San Francisco. And in San Francisco, someone finally realized that this is a gem. So people in France, San Francisco, are starting to transcribe it, then translate it, and they figure out that the diary was written by Rivka Lipschitz, a Jewish girl from Łódź ghetto. What happened with her? What happened? How the diary ended up in Auschwitz? So that was the beginning of a research and a book and the exhibition that actually now is in the United States. It was presented at the Jewish Museum in Milwaukee. It will go to Contemporary Jewish Museum in San Francisco. It will go to Detroit. It will go to Dallas Holocaust Museum. So it is all booked already by a number of institutions because it's absolutely amazing story. So I mean, every story is amazing because we are giving a voice to someone that otherwise is lost. So every story, every photo is absolutely powerful experience for us.
No, absolutely, and I remember both of those exhibitions very, very clearly, and were very powerful. So maybe talk a little bit about an exhibition that's also kind of close to us here at the JCC, which is the Schanzer, about Jan Marcin Schanzer, and maybe the story, which is a nice story because of course the origin of the exhibition really is a woman who's become close to you and is close to us here at the JCC, Elizabeth Schanzer. And I, had been hearing the moment I met Elizabeth Schanzer, I was hearing, she said, "Oh, my cousin, Jan Marcin Schanzer." And then I would tell people, and, I didn't know because I didn't grow up here, but everyone who knew, "Oh, of course, Jan Marcin Schanzer." And now you have the exhibition. So maybe talk a little bit about it, which is just a fantastic, if there's ever something that makes me sad that it's during Corona, that the millions of people should be seeing this one, it's the Schanzer one. But maybe talk a little bit about that one, Kuba.
It's an amazing project. As you say, I mean, lots of those stories that we tell through our exhibition starts with a person coming in through the doors and saying, "Look, I have a story." And this was pretty much how this exhibition started. We've met with Andrzej Rojek, who is another person that told us about Elizabeth and her cousin, that she is a cousin of Jan Marcin Schanzer, and asked if that would not be something interesting for us. And then connecting with Elizabeth, we've learned that this is an amazing subject for the story. And Jan Marcin Schanzer was born in Kraków in a very assimilated family. Before the war, he would spend most of his life in Warsaw. And he would already, before the war, he would become an illustrator of books for kids. He would continue his work when he was in hiding in Warsaw. And then would do this also for the 30 years after the war. And Jan Marcin Schanzer has created some of the most significant, some of the most important graphics in the post-war Polish culture. I mean, he would create some of the characters that we Poles recognize at the blink of an eye. Those characters are kind of part of our DNA. And the thing is that although we knew those characters, Środka Marysia or Pan Kleks and many, many others, no one would have any idea that actually the creator was Jan Marcin Szancer, that he, the Polish Jew. And that was something that we thought is extremely important to tell, especially these days. I mean, especially today when we're kind of looking at Poland, that is unfortunately once again starting to describe the Jews with the things that are dividing. This is something that what I think collectively what we've achieved in Poland over the last 30 years, or what was achieved in Poland over the last 30 years, was redefinition of the Jew from a box of the aliens, the strangers, the enemies, into the box our own. Right. And what we've been facing in the last couple of years, with lots of right-wing press picking up on different stereotypes, with the EPN bill and so on. Once again, this very bad, frightful process of marking the Jews with enemy, restitution, money, right. And all those
like the Jews are not inherently part of Poland. It's them, the outsiders.
Precisely. So for us, the Szancer has become a perfect tool to take part in this discussion, to say, look, if you want to get rid of Szancer, you need to get rid of many things, many characters, many things that are building you as a present-day regular, Pole. So this is the high level. But of course, on a basic level, we wanted to create an exhibition in which kids with their parents and grandparents will just have fun, will enjoy it, will learn, use their imagination just to have fun. And that's what we wanted to achieve with this exhibition.
I think you have. It's wonderful. Not only that, but what's very cool is that I'm reminded of it all the time, because as I walk around Kazimierz, you have some of the characters on sort of buildings in Kazimierz, that you have certain sort of things on the windows and stuff. So I see every single day.
It seems that was the goal for the people, so the people would see it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just sad that it's now. I guess something had to be now, but that it's not being seen, at least in person, by as many people. How long will you keep it up for, though, Kuba?
So because of the corona, we will keep it all the way until the summer of 2021. So it will be here. We were meant to open it during Jewish Culture Festival, which, as we know, was cancelled or postponed. So we will keep it until the next festival. So it will still be here because we believe it's an important story. But for us, I mean, we've been planning this exhibition long before coronavirus. We hadn't had any clue that this would come, and in all this mess, it became very fortunate that we ended up with this particular exhibition, because this exhibition was targeting local audience. Had we had an exhibition about Holocaust or something kind of less local, it would be much different. But the exhibition allowed us to bring lots and lots of people in those 2 or 3 months after the closure. So in terms of audience and helping the museum keep running, that was really amazing thing to have.
No, that's good. No, I'm happy. That's a nice thing to see, the way that sort of worked out. And I know Elizabeth is very happy with it, and hopefully she she needs to be able to travel and come and see it. She's seen it, of course, but to see it in person is I think will be very special for her.
Yeah, well, actually, what we're doing now is planning about the traveling version of the exhibition. So even if Elizabeth wouldn't be able to come to Kraków next year, we hope that we may be able to take the exhibition to her, to New York and some other places. So keep your fingers crossed for that.
Well, I hope absolutely. I hope it travels all over, but I really hope that people are able to travel again for all of our sakes, for your institution and for our institution. I'm as two institutions that are very dependent on people traveling and visiting us and then becoming our supporters. Let's hope that this, and for many other reasons, obviously, but let's hope for the health of our institutions and of our community here, that things will end, that this Corona situation will change in not too long. Kuba, a couple more questions I have to ask you. This is especially very important as somebody who's local from Kazimierz. Are you on Team Latka or Team Hamantash, Kuba?
Latka.
Yes.
No doubt. And again, we would eat latkes in my family home, and it was I was gravely surprised. I actually didn't tell it my mom that, listen, that's not originally Polish. So shh.
Yeah, exactly. And Kuba, because I always ask my favorite question to ask, what are your 3 favorite films?
I'm a big fan of Star Wars, so that's one thing. I like. Let me see. I mean, I recently on the top of my list returned movies from late 80s, early 1990s. I think you should know it. When you're getting older, you kind of look at the early days with a big sentiment. So recently I've been rediscovering all those movies I've been terrified of when I was a teenager, like Gremlins.
Gremlins, classic.
Gremlins, and the one that I enjoyed very much when I was a young boy, Goonies, about those guys.
Oh, of course. This is my childhood, Kuba.
Same here. So I've been kind of very fond of those, and since I have
Do you watch them with the boy? Do you watch them with the boys?
I started to watch the Goonies with my older one. He's 5, and he's still a bit too young, but can't wait. I mean, I just can't really wait to have a reason to watch it again with them, because otherwise I feel stupid watching Gremlins.
Oh,
37.
No. There's never. Gremlins and Goonies are all time classics. Kuba, say hi to Gosha and the boys. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything, and we're so happy that we have you there, and that Galicia Jewish Museum is such a strong partner of the JCC. And thank you for all that you do, educating Poles and people around the world about Jewish life, what was in Poland before and what continues to be.
Jonathan, thank you so much also for having us here and for being our friend and partner throughout all those years. I think those things that we do respectively are matching each other. I mean, we create this good energy that is really changing the Kraków and in some way in the wider aspect of Poland. So it is still a very good moment in time that we can have influence. We can change things. So thank you so much for being there. I mean, JCC is an amazing institution and has changed the landscape of Kraków. No one can imagine Kraków now not with the JCC. So that's your staff.
Thank you.
Work. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Kuba. And I'll tell you one last thing is that if you were a better student and I was a better teacher, we would be doing this in Hebrew, but we do it in English. So.
Ma pitom and baya.
Yeah, see that, everybody? Official documentation. Thank you, Kuba. Be well, my friend.
Be well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.